lawful order to produce those records. So I just wanted to mention that that was one additional grounds for the termination. You have the termination letter. It's very clear why Mr. Gardner was terminated. We believe the evidence will support everything that you've seen in this letter. And at the conclusion of the hearing, we will ask you to uphold this termination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Board. Please, Board. Again, my name is Abraham McKinnon. I'm here on behalf of Captain Gardner. And, of course, we're probably going to hear a little bit different story now. Before I get into that, I want to start with a little bit more detail as to Captain Gardner's 27 years of service. I think the Board should understand how long Captain Gardner and what he's meant to this community. He began in May 12th of 1984. Captain Gardner, I'll call him Captain, I think it's Richard Gardner. He began work for Volusia County as a tower guard. 16 years old, he lived here with his mother, and he was hired as a lifeguard down, what time was beach patrol, the lifeguards. In 1986, he continued employment and became certified as emergency medical technician, provided life-saving services and emergency medical services to those beachgoers. In 1987, he was promoted to what they call a provisional position, which guaranteed him 64 hours for every 2 weeks. Basically became a full-time employee year-round, referred to in the old days as station crew, and he would work full-time with the county. He continued that position until the 1992 time period, and at that time he was actually identified by the county to be a public spokesman for the beach. He did live beach reports with 2 News, something had never been done before with WESH. They had reported in the morning of the beach conditions, and that was part of a priority of the beach at that time, Volusia County, to get patrons to come down and visit the beach. And he did that from 92 to 94. In that same time period, he was also assigned as what they called a junior lifeguard instructor. As a junior lifeguard instructor, for approximately 8 to 13 weeks in the summer, he provided water safety instruction, first aid, and other beach knowledge to young persons from the age of approximately 8 to 13. Those were the up-and-comers, if you will, so that the beach department would have life-saving and lifeguards who would be willing to participate in the lifeguards as they became of age. And at that time, as you know, the beach lifeguards, about age 16, you could work for the Volusia County. In 1995, he was one of the first 10 employees to volunteer for what we now have is this cross-trained beach resource officer. And he volunteered for that. It wasn't a popular thing to do at the time. At the time, this was the lifeguards, and lifeguards weren't particularly encouraged to become law enforcement officers. But he was one of those 10 who accepted that opportunity and went through the program and became one of the first, what they called then, the beach resource officers. And in 1995, when he finished that, he became appointed as a lieutenant on the beach. And also in 95, he received his law enforcement certificate. And he was the first one in 1996 to actually operate as a lifeguard and a law enforcement on the same day. He's the first one in Volusia County history to do both of those jobs on the same day. In the summer of 96, he was promoted to what I think council referred to them as lifeguard supervisors, and you'll hear them refer to each other as captain. And you'll see the organizational charts as we put them up, but basically become captains of their zone. And lifeguards have a unique sort of chain of command structure, and you'll get to see that later on. But evidence will show that's what he became a lifeguard captain. In 1998, he was one of the public information officers who would give reports on the beach when there was a drowning or there was an incident on the beach. He would be the one that the county would use, and that he would be the voice of the face of the county, so, similar to Mr. Byron, who reports for the county now, makes the spokesman. In 2010, referred to as acting deputy chief. He actually applied and was interviewed for the deputy chief position. And the deputy chief position was and you'll hear the testimony from Director Sweat, was a nationwide search. They had people from Salt Lake, people from California. They had law enforcement officers all around the area, not just in the beach department, that applied for that and were interviewed. And he was selected as the top candidate. Unfortunately, he couldn't accept it because of the pay cut it was going to require. But it goes to show you how much they respected him on the beach and how much he meant to the beach throughout this 27 years of experience and participation. I think council brought it up, and I'm glad that she did, and I'm glad she brought it to the attention of the board, because this really does start back in February of 2009. This is about, Captain Gardner's here today, and you're going to hear the evidence because of what's called the Ashley Drury case, or another case is Danielle Smith. That's why he's here today. Ashley Drury was a lifeguard employee who was under the age of 18 years old, and there were adult beach officers who had sexual relations with her. And that's a crime, as we all know. In the county, those officers were charged criminally, and Daniel Smith also was involved in that. But there was also a federal lawsuit that was filed against the county. And in that federal lawsuit, there was tremendous criticism of the time the Director of Public Protection, which his name is Mike Coffin. And Mr. Coffin received a tremendous amount of criticism, as did the county, for that conduct. And that is it's an important feature, because what we're here today about, and the evidence that will show, is that's why Captain Gardner got fired. This was a response not to conduct of Captain Gardner, but as a response to that public perception and an attempt to appear as if they were responsible. The evidence is going to show approximately, and I think council pointed it out, about mid-February 2009, not February, but probably May, June 2009, Captain Gardner had a relationship. He was married at the time, and there's going to be no bones about it. He was married, had been going through some marital problems, and he had a relationship with an officer named Officer Gittner. And she's going to come in and testify here. The relationship was off-duty. There will be no testimony before you today that anything happened at work improper. There was no favoritism shown at work. There was no improper conduct at work. Most people, while they may have, rumors go, may have been suspicious, no one will testify before you today that any of this conduct occurred at work. This was an off-duty relationship by two adult law enforcement officers. And when that relationship began, she was in Dunlop. The testimony you'll hear from Director Sweat is that the Beach Patrol has no policy against adult officers having relationships. It is not the policies. In fact, it's quite common down there. And maybe common in other places too. There are many, many officers down the beach department who have relationships with other adult officers. Some are in the same building. Some are 2 doors down from each other. Some are supervisors, and some are subordinates. Some are both subordinates. And that is an accepted practice at the beach. Mr. Coffin understood this. He knew about it. Nobody made any policy changes. Nobody described any policy changes. That was an accepted conduct. Off-duty relationships between adult officers, not minors, adult officers, consensual adult officers. Because that's really what this is going to come down to. Adult relationships off-duty. That relationship continued, and it was sporadic. The evidence will show that it was sporadic. And there was a time when Captain Gardner was asked by Director Sweat, "Are you having a relationship?" And at the time, it'll be undisputed, they were not in a relationship, and he said no. Director Sweat will tell you that he didn't ask, "Have you been dating?" Or, if you do date, tell me when you do that. And he will tell you honestly, Director Sweat, that if I should have told him that. If I wanted that information, that's what I should have asked him. And I didn't ask him that. And so there'll be no evidence that the statement that he made was in any way untruthful. In fact, it'll be truthful. Their claim is it's misleading, and I'm not sure how that would be, we'll understand it, but it's an absolute truthful statement. That relationship continued. And in August of 2011, it's true, Officer Gittner was upset and wanted to quit her job. And it was at night, and she asked Captain Gardner, who was the daytime acting deputy chief, to come to her house and